Hey, Inspired Women! The Inspired podcast is designed to have relevant conversations centered around our everyday lives, looking through the lens of the Word of God. Life can be hard to navigate, especially as a Jesus-believing sister, mom, friend, single, or wife. We invite you and welcome you to our table and hope that you're inspired to view God in bigger and more awe-inspiring ways as you walk this journey with Him.
Well, welcome back to the Inspired Podcast. My name is Janice, and I'm on the Inspired team. And I have two of my friends here today. I have Sara, and I have Hope.
Hello.
And I'm so glad you guys are joining me today. I think we're going to have an amazing episode. But before we get started, the most important thing we need to talk about right now is the Inspired Podcast and the Inspired Conference.
Yeah. I wish we had
Okay. The conference is April 27th. That's a Saturday. And you can register right now. In fact, if you register now, you get early bird pricing. Now, who doesn't like a sale?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I jump on any sale, even if it's something I don't need.
I mean, absolutely. You want to do that. And so you can go and register right now. Get your phone out. Get your phone out right now. And you want to go to the x.church/inspired 2024. And it has all kinds of information there. If you have questions about who's going to be speaking and all the other stuff, it is going to be amazing. I mean, you're going to come here and you're going to be with hundreds of your friends, basically.
Yeah.
I know. So, Hope, what is great about you about the conference?
Well, first of all, I can't believe it's 2024. That kind of scared me a little bit when you said that.
Yes, it is. It's 2024.
Is indeed, 2024. But I just love, I've said this before and I'll say it again, I just love the unity that conference brings. It's like, it's weird to talk about tears, but I love that we walk away from the day with tear-filled eyes and just grateful for and it's a unified feeling. It's a unified emotion, and it's grateful for what God's done and what God is going to do. I think it sets you up for, it's almost like a catalyst into your faith. And for me, it's almost like a mid-ish year reminder to like really pour in and really lean into what God has. So I'm excited. I can't wait for the worship too. There's something special about all women worshiping together. I don't know what it is. I've said it for years.
It's the amount of estrogen in the room.
It is. And women worship different when there's no men in the room.
Yes.
I'll say it. It might be a hot
take.
It's a hot take. It's a hot take. But seriously, women worship different when there's no men in the room. So I think it's really cool. I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's going to be good.
Sarah?
I'm so excited too. The Inspired Conference is always like kind of time set apart from normal life. And it's just a time to kind of be here with other women and with your friends and just be in the presence of God and not have any distractions, because we as women like have so many things we focus on in a day, like taking care of the house, work, kids, if you have kids, relationships, friendships, all the things. And it's just a day to like set literally everything aside and just focus on like your relationship with God and let Him pour into you and speak to you. And I too am a huge fan of the worship always. And so I'm so excited. It's very fun having like a behind the scenes look at what's going on. And let me just tell you, it gets better every year. And this year is going to be awesome. I can't wait.
So you see, you should not miss the conference. I mean, these are glowing reports, obviously, and it is so worth it. And I really like what you said, Sara, in that you can come and you can basically shut down all the tabs that are going on in your brain. You know, we have so many things that we focus in on, and instead you have this gift of a day on a Saturday that is just you and all these other women who are coming with expectant hearts and to hear what God has to say. And so please don't miss it. Remember, go to the x.church/inspired 2024 and get registered, okay? All right.
I can't wait.
I can't wait either. I'm excited. So, so today, it's an interesting topic we're going to dive into. We're going to talk about a couple different things. They're all related. One is the role of women. And how do we figure out where we fit in?
The age-old question.
Yes. And really, also, then how do we support one another?
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking, as I was thinking about this topic, that in the last 50 years, there has been so many changes when you talk about roles of women in our culture. You know, when I was in college and high school, even had my first job, I think I've shared this before, that I worked at JCPenney at the mall in the junior department.
Oh, that's
you know.
fun.
But I got paid less than guys that were doing
Yeah.
the same thing I
Yeah.
was. And we just took it for granted that that's what it was. Or when I was growing up, it was like, you didn't say, as a girl, I want to be a doctor. You said, I wanted to be a nurse. Or I want to be a teacher.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't say, well, I'm going to be a scientist or an astronaut or a physicist or something.
Yeah.
And now instead, it's like, there's all this stuff that's open to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm wondering sometimes if when we get overwhelmed with choices, that we start wondering, well, what should I be doing?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to hear you say that because for me, I didn't grow up like that. It was like the options are endless. And if I want to be a doctor, great. I can be a doctor. In fact, my family really wanted me to be a doctor. It was like pushed. So it's interesting.
Hope, I have a hard time picturing you as a doctor.
I cannot stand blood at all. Like I pass
a
out
no.
at the sight of blood. So I would not be a good doctor. But it's like you have your family pushes you and it's like, what if you were this? What if you were that? And for me, hearing you say like I was paid different. I've learned about that. I've heard about that before, but the fact that that was your reality is crazy. I can only imagine how you feel now.
Yeah.
Looking back, you're probably like, well, why is it like this now? I could have been doing something totally different, or I could have been on a totally different path if it was like that, when I was growing up. So it's just interesting to hear that because it feels really far removed from my life. I don't know about you, but it feels very far removed.
Well, at your age, 50 years does probably feel like a long time. To me, it's like that's my life. So it's like, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But, I think that because we have choices, there are positives to it. And I also think there's some negatives to it.
Yeah.
What if you have the person who says, like you said, I'm not going to be a doctor. I don't want to be a doctor. Or and the push is, but you should be because you can be.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And so it's almost like at that point, how do you figure out really what is it that I'm supposed to be rather than what I should be?
Yeah.
Well, it's hard because I feel like the world has shifted from such a far area in one way to now. And like growing up, especially like being a teenager before you're even an adult, it's like you kind of just learn to do what you're told. And do what the world is doing. And obviously that's not how we aim to live now. But for me, college was an urgency. And if I would have had a voice then, I would have said like, I don't really want to go to college. I want to be a mom and I want to be a wife. But like, and that used to be what women did. And now it's like, it's not the norm to do that right out of high school and to do that like right in as you're turning 20 years old.
Yeah.
And so like it all goes into this topic of being assertive. And it's like, I wish I had more of the voice that I feel like I'm gaining now at that age. 'Cause now I just have debt. And I never wanted to go to college. I didn't want to do, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And it just wasn't a good idea for me to go at the time because I mean, I went down this path that wasn't going to be my end goal. And it just, felt kind of now like a waste of time. It wasn't. It's like I made all the choices that I've made for a reason. But I feel like at that age, like when we're going to college and or deciding what to do after high school, we're still too young to like make those kinds of big decisions. Like the people that I went to high school with that took like a gap year, I'm like, you are so smart. Like that was the wisest thing you could have done.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about talking to someone who's 15 or 16 and saying, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? A career?
Crazy.
When you think about it, that is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I truly knew what I really wanted to do.
Well, and it can set a lot of people up for failure or for hardship, like when they're coming out of college. Because if you're pushed into college, you take out loans or whatever, and then you come out and you've got all this debt, and you're a brand new adult, and you also have to buy a house and all the things.
I think it's just important to note that, that is a issue or a problem that we have when we're 18, 19, 20. But think about all the women that are now 50, 55, 60 that are also trying to make a decision of like, okay, what do I do? What do I, my kids are out of the house now. What do I do? Do I want to keep working? Do I not? Do I feel like this is where I still fit? Do I not? I think through, and we talked about transitions and, life change a couple episodes ago, but just thinking through like, does that ever go away? And probably not. The answer is probably not. That we feel like, oh, we should go this way because the world is pushing us, but we don't know if that's where we fit. So how do we attack that? How do we help through the process? And I think that's why I'm excited to talk about too. Like, how can we support one another in situations like this? Because I don't know about you, Janice, but has that pressure ever gone away for you? Of like feeling like, oh, I feel like maybe I should do that, but I don't know. Kind of you're like teetering on the line, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I got out of college, or when I was in college, it was really probably during the real big rise of feminism from the standpoint of when I say feminism, I mean the really, really aggressive, radical feminism.
Yeah.
Yes, we burned our bras and all this stuff.
That is crazy.
Can I still do that?
Yeah.
Can we still do that?
Oh my gosh.
Anyways, but it was all of that. But I remember when I graduated from college, I was at that time married to my ex-husband. And what I due to life circumstances, and my degree was in music education. At that time, most school systems were eliminating music when it came to being in elementary and middle school. And so there were very few jobs, and the ones that you could find were like way out in nowhere land in that kind of thing. So, and that was not an option. So, and also I really wanted to be a mom. Yeah. And I really wanted to start a family. And it was something that I had so much pushback on from my advisors and my fellow students and things like that. It's like, you're nuts. You're wasting your education. You're wasting your life to have kids, that kind of thing. And it was not a popular thing to do. So that was like my first experience many times to say, look, I really want to do this. And it was the right thing. And it was hard because it was not viewed as something of value. And which is the thing I think we all deal with, is that what gives us value? Yeah. Is it our role? Right. Is it whatever? Yeah. And then things go, and as I got older, I worked part-time. I worked for the YMCA for a while and taught dance aerobic classes.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You're about to teach me a dance aerobic class.
In the 80s. Oh, yeah. When, me and Jane Fonda, So anyways, I did all that. Jazzercise, it wasn't Jazzercise. The Y had their own program, but it was a blast. So that's why I know all the 80s music, because that's what we used. But anyways, I'm talking about all kinds of
that
things.
That feels like you're fit. Yeah. That's where you fit.
Oh, it was a blast. But when my ex-husband left us, I had to find a full-time job, and that's how I ended up in the medical field. And it was not my first choice in life, but it was like, this is a necessity. I need to have insurance. I need to take care of my kids. And so I found myself in that niche. But then it was like, I know there's more, because I had felt for a long time that God had a call in my life for ministry, but it was like, this is never going to happen until an opportunity opened up here. But sometimes our roles too are just even other things, just who we are, a wife, a mother, a friend, a sister, when you're like, once both of my parents have passed away, you realize I guess I'm not, am I a daughter still?
Yeah.
You know, because
Yeah.
my parents aren't alive, things like
Yeah.
that. So you have all those little pieces but sometimes it's really an uncomfortable place where you are,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
What about you, Sarah? I know you just talked about you went to college.
Yeah.
And it wasn't maybe the thing that,
It wasn't it for me. It wasn't it.
That's not it.
No, and I got married and had kids young,
Yeah.
and it's like hard to be. I'm 27 now. I have 3 kids, and so not many 27-year-olds have 3 kids. And
I did.
I know quite a few, but not. It's not necessarily the norm. But so I'm kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, wrapping my mind around the fact that like I can go do something anytime I want. I don't have to be 18 to go to college. Like
Yeah.
I can change directions and pivot at literally any point in my life. And so kind of like what you were mentioning, Hope, about, you know, when you get closer to retirement age, like, do I want to keep working? What do I
Yeah.
want to do after this?
Yeah.
That's like, to me, I see that as a freedom, not
Yeah.
necessarily like a stress, because I stay at home with my kids, and so I'm around kids all day and not around adults all day. And so just knowing that, like, you know, being able to cherish the young years and knowing that they will be in school and I can go do something with adults after that. And that opportunity is freeing for me, and I am so grateful that I have done things the way that I have because of that, if that makes sense. So, I kind of have like a different view of it. To me, I'm like, freedom, like I can do whatever I want.
Yeah. And then for me, on the opposite end, I'm like, I feel like there are way too many options, and how in the heck am I going to do this? And it feels like limiting almost in a way. So I feel like, it's funny how God works things out in different ways, but I think it's cool for you, Sarah, to have the perspective of like, like I want to go do something. And then Janice, for you to have walked through so many different, doing so many different things and finding your fit and finding your place and assertiveness in so many different. And I feel like I'm just now starting to feel that way. So you might be on the journey. You've been on the journey for a long time, and I'm just like starting to find it. So it's cool to hear that.
I mean, we were talking about the idea that you, like you were saying, you have a lot of choices. Do you ever feel like I should be doing more?
Yeah, I feel like the world tells us that, especially social media, the age-old issue of social media. But it's like you see moms that are like thriving and crushing it, what it looks like on social media. And then you're like, wait, what? They're like an influencer too? How do they do that? Oh, and they like own a brand and a company. Oh, wow. How do they do that? I need to be like that. Oh, wow. And they have this big, beautiful, amazing house. Oh, and they're involved in church. Oh, and they're this. Like, you just learn so much through social media about people that I think it's great. And it is good to have something like you're working towards. But I think oftentimes it's like, this is overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like this, it leads to comparison. It leads to shame, right?
And you feel unworthy.
Yeah. It's like,
I can't even tell you how much my last few years have like impacted my stance on that, because obviously, like I said, I got married young, and like seeing all these other people around me go and do all these big things. And I've got like people that I went to school with that are now like graduating with like their masters. I'm like, what?
yeah.
And so, but it was very easy to compare and just say like, am I taking like the easy way out because I don't know what I want to do?
Yeah.
And like, I get like, is staying at home like the lazy thing? Like, is it easy? Like, am I taking the easy way out? And I know that I don't, because my day-to-day is difficult, and I'm raising 3 girls, and I want to raise them to know and love God from an earlier age than I did.
Yeah.
So that they're confident and that they don't have to face a lot of the things that I've had to face. But the last few years of me just diving into and really like receiving from God his pleasure in how I steward the things that I'm given has gifted me in so many ways. Like, I can't even begin to tell you. I used to feel unworthy, and I used to feel like I wasn't doing enough.
Yeah.
But coming to this place of realizing that like God, like rest is good. Like God gives us rest. Like life should be enjoyable. And obviously with young kids, I don't really get a whole lot of rest, but I do get to spend time with them, just sitting with them. And that's restful and just like pouring into them. And so I think just like believing that God is like well pleased with me, and he loves the way that I steward the things that he's given me and the opportunities that he's given me, no matter what that is. And I think that's just why it's so important to be like honed in on like where you believe that he's calling you, and like just being able to have your ear tuned to his voice, and knowing where you're at is where God has placed you, and then believing that he's like happy and pleased with you about the way that you're handling those areas of your life is so freeing. And it pulls you out of that mindset of just comparing yourself, feel like you're like you're not doing enough, you should be doing more, you're not where you should be in life, etc. It's
I mean, that's really such a healthy way to look at where God has you right now. How did you get to that space?
Honestly, it takes like a lot of work actually too, especially like for someone like me, because I'm a people pleaser and I'm an overthinker. So that's like the two, like it's like the worst crossroads. Yeah. And then, so I think just like getting to know my mind, realizing that God made me the way that I am, and that he hasn't put anything inside of me that like he's also hasn't given me resources to learn about and to overcome, and to just like understand that he's with me in those things. And I think just I have like experienced some shame in my life, and I made bad choices when I was young, and just instead of like melting into those things and just accepting what my life became at that point in time, and living with that like name, because that wasn't who I was, doing the hard work to overcome those things, and like it's sometimes it's just a choice to believe what God says about you. And even if it's not in your heart yet, you can decide to make it like be in your mind and be like deep in your brain. And I think just like it has been hard work and it's taken a lot of time, but that is where like the gift of staying at home has come in handy for me, because I can read a lot, I can listen to a lot of audiobooks, I can study scripture, and just putting that time and effort and energy in, because I know it's so important. I really want to steward who God is trying to form me into, to go do the things that I know he's calling me to do. If I'm not taking action now and doing that work and putting the time in to become that person, like how is he going to trust me down the road to do the things that I believe that he is asking me to do?
That's good.
And it's worth it. It's hard and it's emotional, especially like I said, for someone like me.
Well, it's, it's kind of like King David. David was anointed as king, and then he went back out in the fields and was a shepherd. And God trained him. I figure I always think about the fact that things I've read about sheep and how dumb they are and everything. and how it was like, well, then, Lord, you just helped him to figure out how to work with dumb creatures, just like all the rest of us, But it was a training ground for him in many ways. And like you were saying, God doesn't waste anything.
No. Even if other people don't see it.
Yes.
That's where like the most beautiful work happens and takes place, is when you know he's the only one watching.
In the secret. In the secret place.
That's cool.
I think that's really good. And I know you and I have talked a little bit about some of the experiences you've had since you've been out of college. And I would love to hear kind of some of the details.
So I have only ever known being in ministry. Like that has really been my story. I got super involved here actually when I was like a 15-year-old and was like leading a team of people.
I remember that.
It was like, but it was so crazy because I wasn't raised in church. I didn't know Jesus at all until I was 15. So I just felt like from a very young age, God had like ministry on my life. And so I kind of ran in it. I was like, okay, if this is what you're calling me to, then I'm going to do it. And of course I had doubts and all the things, but I graduated college and had an opportunity to work for a women's ministry that I had actually been leading in college. And I got to work for their headquarters, and it was in Nashville. And, I'm moving from Cincinnati, I went to Northern Kentucky University, so it's near Cincinnati. I'm moving from Cincinnati to Nashville, which is like the coolest city in the world. Like to some people, to me, I think Nashville is so cool. And I almost took this sense of like pride, like I'm moving to Nashville and it's really cool. And I think I carried that with me. And yes, I was going for ministry. I wasn't going for music or producing or whatever, what people usually move there for. But it was almost like this sense of pride. And I felt like I carried it with me into what I did. And of course there's like some level of you should take pride in what you do, right? But it was unhealthy pride. It was like, I'm moving to Nashville for this really cool job, you know? And so then I feel like that was just like my story the whole time I was there. Yes, I felt like I was walking in my calling and my purpose, and I really did feel like, okay, this is where I fit. But that's what we're talking about, right? Where do we fit? But I was doing it all in the name of comparison. Like everything that I did was like, I literally, down to like the car that I bought, was like, because everyone else had this car, I was like, well, I have to keep up. I have to do that too.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I felt like my life, now looking back, at the time I didn't realize it, but now looking back, I'm like, okay, I was walking in what God called me to for sure, but I was doing it all in the wrong way. Like I was just fighting comparison left and right. I wanted to look like the people. I wanted to talk like the people. I wanted to do all the things that the people were doing. And now looking back, I'm like, that's destruction. Like that is so destructive. And so I had an opportunity to move back here to my hometown, which felt like, you know, for me, prideful hope at the time was like, there's no way I can do that. That's not cool. Moving back to my hometown,
it is cool,
that is not cool. Yeah, like that's not cool at all. And like, what about this life that I've built where I drive this car and I do this and I say this and I go here and I'm friends with famous people? Like, it really hurt me to let all of that go. And that's how I knew, like, okay, maybe I'm not actually where I fit right now. Maybe this is something that I do need to dive into. And so I felt like it was the time to come back, and I joined staff here, and it was so cool just to see God like really like shed off those things. I feel like in the last 2 years, I have just realized like it, and it really took me coming back to my hometown where it all began to humble myself and say like, okay, I've been trying to fit in this way, into this role in the wrong way. How do I actually find who I am and where I fit actually? And so I feel like it was honestly a hard couple of years. It really, like you said, Sarah, it's hard. It is so hard to be like, okay, I might not be like well known in this circle of people, and that's okay. And I have to go into this knowing I'm not well known, and that's okay. Or I might have to ask a few questions. I don't know it all in this place, right? That's okay. And that's how I feel like God kind of revealed to me, like, this is who you are. Like, get back to who you are, not who this person is, not who that person is. Who are you? Hope Mitchell, who are you? And now I'm about to, I recently made a transition of life again and accepted a new opportunity. And it's, again, interesting to figure out, okay, how do I take that from where I was when I was in Nashville, the prideful, comparison-driven everything, to then God shedding all of that off of me and me finding who I am. Now, as I go into a new opportunity, how do I carry that? How do I carry that into this new opportunity? Because I feel like that's the process, right? Like, we realize there's an issue. God helps us through it and sees us through. But now, how do I walk in that? I think that's what I'm currently learning is like, okay, I know these things about me and I know who I am, but how do I be sure that I don't go back to the comparison driven hope and I don't go back to the prideful hope? I stay in the, okay, this is me, true to me. So it's been a journey. One thing I wanted to note, Sarah, when you were talking is back in college, actually, someone, clearly this has been an issue in my life. I've like wanted to be like other people. Someone in my life, that a really dear friend, she was like, you need to just like sit with the Lord and ask him who you are. So I went on this journey. It was literally like a 2-week. In the morning, I would go to the same coffee shop, the same place. Like, I was mad if somebody took my table. And I literally would just like sit there with a journal. And it sounds like uber spiritual and whatever, but I'd sit there with a blank journal, and whatever word I felt like I heard God say, I would write it down. So I would ask him, like, all I want right now, God, is for you to tell me who I am. And I would write it down. And I still have the list, and I still have to go back to it, like, all the time.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget, I felt like he told me that I sparkled. And that was the first.
You do sparkle.
Oh, thank you. That was the first word that I got. And so having that as the foundation of like, okay, God tells me that I sparkle. How do I do that when I go into every situation?
Yeah.
And not try to sparkle like someone else sparkles,
Yeah.
but how do I sparkle for me
Yes.
to glorify him in the way that he's made me?
I
So
love that.
that's like a practical thing that you could do if you feel like, oh, I'm listening to this and I feel like I don't even know where to start. Like, I don't feel like I fit in anywhere. I don't feel like I know who I am. I don't feel like I'm assertive or whatever. A very practical first step could literally be sitting down with a journal and asking God to tell you who you are.
I know that's, I was thinking as you were talking and remembering in probably when my kids were younger, it was probably in the 80s and everything, in the church situation I was in, of just that pressure to fit in, you know, to kind of like cookie cutter yourself. And how uncomfortable that was, you know, because inside of me was this creative person that just wanted to go, "Wah!" you know, and it was very restrictive and everything.
Yes.
And I remember when I broke free from that, it was the same kind of journey that you two were talking about. It's like, okay, I just felt like I cut the you know, I'm on the boat and I just cut the anchor and I'm out here somewhere and I have no idea what I'm doing. You know, another transition I had too was when my husband passed away. I'll never forget, I was writing in my journal, it was probably about a month or so after he passed away, and I was like, I don't know who I am anymore. I'm not a wife. I'm a widow. That means I'm single again.
Yeah.
It's, it's all this, 9 years before this, it was always Israel and Janice, or Janice and Israel. And now it's just me. So what does that mean? And what does that mean for the rest of my life? And it was a year-long journey, at least, to try to figure out who I am and what is it, God, that you have for me to go on. Yeah. And one of the things that I held on to was a book that I had read in the 90s. It's called The Allure of Hope, and by a woman by the name of Jan Meyer. And one of the concepts she talks about is that God calls us to be women with presence. And that just means that you own who you are, and you are who you are. You know who Jesus wants you to be. And that means that when you sit with someone, they feel, after they've had an interaction with that, they know something about you. They know something about you, and that interaction has affected them in some way.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why this podcast is so valuable, because that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, right.
And it's more important to be, that woman with presence, feeling settled, happy in their own skin, all of those things. I think too, sometimes age has something to do with it. I read something somewhere, I couldn't find it, I was looking for it, but sometimes it seems like until you're around 50, at that point it's like, you know what, this is me and I'm comfortable in my skin. Yeah. It's not saying that I don't ever feel insecure, right, or walking into a situation and going, oh my gosh, I don't feel like believe me, it happens frequently, but God always brings me back to, this is who you are. And this morning, we had a prayer time here at church, and this came to me. It says that, and I wrote it down, and it said, we may have many roles in this life, but we must remember that God defines our identity and role, not our job, not others, not our culture, and not even ourselves. He defines our role, and that is that we are his daughters.
That's so good. That's so good.
That's what I love, the story of Jesus and the woman with the issue of blood, that she was so desperate, which is, I always pray, it's like, God, I want to be that desperate for you. And when he, she touched the tassel on his garment, and he felt the healing power go out, and he goes like, "Who touched me?" And then she finally comes up, and he looks at her and he calls her daughter, this woman that for 12 years was an outcast. And I think that that's what he does to us. He always calls us back to the fact that we are his daughters. When everything else is telling us that we don't fit, or we don't know, or we're trying to figure out, and we're in a transition, we are still always his daughters.
That reminds me of a study that I did. It's through For the Girl. So if you're listening, For the Girl, it's a study that is called Daughters, and it actually walks through different women, I think 6 different women in the Bible. So it's like a 6-week study. And really, that's the emphasis, is that all 6 of these women were powerful women. There are powerhouses in the Bible.
Yes, there are.
Seriously. But they all had certain things that they walked through, but they still, at the end of the day, remembered, like, okay, I'm on mission from God. I am his daughter. And so that's the whole purpose of the study, is to remind us that we are a daughter of the King. And because of that one simple thing, we can walk in with authority to whatever it is that he's calling us to. We don't have to be qualified. We don't have to have the right thing on or look the certain way. But simply because we are a daughter of his, we have the authority. And I think that's what I've had to remind myself. Like, especially as I'm transitioning out of ministry, it's really easy to walk in, for someone that's been in ministry for a while now, to walk into a ministry space and know that I have authority. But it's really hard for me, which seems weird, and like vice versa. But it's hard for me to walk into the business world and know that I have authority. It's very challenging. And so for me, like, literally, it's an everyday reminder. I am a daughter of the King, and I will walk in authority, knowing that one simple thing.
I mean, we've mentioned it a couple times, but I think that idea of walking in authority brings up the subject of being assertive. We've mentioned assertiveness, and so many times that I think assertiveness can leave a bad taste in some people's mouth, because they think that assertiveness is the same thing as being aggressive. The epitome of the woman who is just like in your face and just this, and I won't use the term that most people would say about that woman, but that kind of thing. But that is aggression. That is not being assertive. Neither is being passive is not being assertive. And then you're letting everyone else call the shots for you, or even worse is passive aggressive, where you just kind of manipulate things a little bit. And I think as women, in many ways, that assertiveness doesn't always come naturally for us. And obviously the way that we raise our daughters now and things like that are different probably. I mean, they are different. I raised my daughter differently than I was raised, because I was raised to be, you want to be nice. You don't want to upset anybody, because girls are always good little girls, all that stuff. And so you don't speak up, you just go along with everything that's going on, and, be nice. Don't disturb the water. Don't upset anything. Don't express your opinion. Just nod and smile. Those sorts kinds of things. And so when the first time I took a class, I was in a group when I was in therapy a long time ago, and it was on Christian assertiveness, and it was eye-opening. And I was like, "You mean I can say no?"
Oh, wow. Wow.
I mean, I didn't know I could say no.
Wow.
And it's like, yes, you can say no. And I think women, many times, we do say yes very easily. But it was like, no, you can actually say, I will get back to you on that. I just need to think about it a little bit, rather than the pressure of the moment of saying, I have to say yes or no.
I definitely struggle with that. Like I had mentioned earlier, I tend to fall into people-pleasing behavior.
None of us ever do that.
No.
And I wasn't necessarily raised like that, Janice, but I love how you said cookie cutter earlier, because it gave me this like picture in my mind of like, if you want to to fit in and to like fit the cookie cutter mold, and then there's all these different people around you and there's all these different opinions, like what happens when you try to put like cookie cutter inside a cookie cutter inside a cookie cutter. Like, where do you fit in? You have to get really small. And I feel like that's what happened to me.
Wow.
And now in hindsight, looking back, I'm like, I made myself so small just to never upset anybody and to be like, so people would just think I'm nice, like I'm easygoing, and like I'm never upset, like I'm never mad at you. And so it was like I made myself really small in the sense of like living kind of as a people pleaser, and made myself small and then realized that is what I was doing. And so I'm kind of like trying to come out of that and understand like what you were saying, Hope, like I'm at home with kids all day. And so I realize I have authority there because I'm the adult. But then when I get into church or serving or just outside of my house with other adults, I have to remember like I'm an adult and I can have authority there too. And so that's something that I'm trying to like receive and own is that as a daughter of Christ, not that you have to be an adult to have authority. I teach my girls that like you have authority over fear, you have authority over anything dark and evil. And just by using the name of Jesus and like he has given you that, you can, even though you're a child, because I don't want them to fall into the same things that I fell into and am still coming out of. So
that's so good.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like I just made myself really small, and now I'm digging out and trying to find my voice and my no or my opinion.
Right. And and your voice is important because you're the only you that God will ever make. And so your voice is unique, and everything about you is unique. About each one of us is that it's unique, and we need to show up. And it's sometimes very difficult when you have made yourself small. I think people pleasing is a really big issue.
Yes,
definitely.
I think, it's like walking into a situation where you're in a room with people and you've never been there before. It's like you read the room and you try to figure out, okay,
where do I go?
Where do I go? How are they acting? What's going on? Did I choose the right thing to wear? And then it's like, or do I need to just kind of hide in a corner because boy, I don't fit? But we do those things. And sometimes it's really hard then just to be who we are.
Yeah, because if you're trying to please every person in your life and they're all different, there's only going to be a couple little things that will make everyone happy. There's got to be a common denominator, and it's going to be a small one. And then you're just going to be quiet and small. And I don't want to do that anymore. And so it goes along with like being assertive respectfully and just because I do have that authority, and like it's good communication. Like just understanding like I don't like confrontation, and that's part of me as a people pleaser. And so but I have to face those things. The deeper the relationships get that I build in my life, which I have avoided in the past, the more there's going to be confrontation, and if I don't face it, I'm just backpedaling and I'm not having deep relationships.
Well, it's doing, and so, if you think about it, it's doing a disservice. Being like allowing ourselves to, like you said, be the small cookie cutter and not lean into like truly who we are. It's not only doing us a disservice, it's holding ourselves back, right? But it's also doing the other person that we're sitting across from a disservice. That's what I try to remind myself. Like, as I'm going into situations, like I have to be fully me, because that's me fully walking in who God has called me to be, and that's glorifying him, which is then going to lead someone else closer to him as well, whether they know Jesus or not. So if I'm sitting with Janice, I have to remind myself, hey, be yourself. Be yourself so that Janice can benefit, right? Because if we're operating in who God has called us to be fully, then the only thing that can come away from that, whether it's a hard conversation or a good conversation, is that we both are closer to him, right? That's the whole goal. And so if we're reminded of that in everything that we do, then I think that allows us to walk into places with a little more authority, a little more assertiveness, knowing like, actually, no, this isn't me, this is him, right? That's what I pray. If anytime I speak, anytime I talk to people, go into a meeting, whatever, I pray, God, let whatever is said today be directly from you. I don't want it to be from me. And I think even just operating day to day like that would be really powerful. And I think it would help us like, okay, this is who God has called me to be. And it's like, it's rewarding to us, but it's rewarding to the person and
Yes.
ultimately gives God the glory.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're a chameleon, you know, one of those little lizard creatures that changes colors.
Yeah.
When you're a chameleon, then no, people do not know who you really are. And it goes back to being a woman with presence, is that when you're with someone like that, you come away and you're just like, I don't think I really know who that person is.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't ring true.
Yeah.
You just feel like they've been trying to figure out what you want them to be.
That I'm like not kidding. That was me.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm still coming out of that. And it's like a slow process, but I have to be patient because I know God is like doing it. He's doing it. And what you were just saying, Hope, like that has honestly helped me is like coming here to X Church and seeing how different people are and like how much people are willing to just embrace like their quirks or like the cool things about them or like their humor and different things like that. Has me having relationships with those people and seeing those things. You are one person in particular. Like I've looked at you and just been like, the way that you are yourself and like the way that you dress and like you just have this, you have a presence and you do sparkle. And so like you've done that for me in my life. There's lots of people here that have where it has actually helped me know like how much God just loves me, just loves me. Like, because I see all these people around me being like who they want to be. And and they don't look like the next person. And just, I know that God loves them. And so like those things that are about me that I haven't let out, he loves them about me. And it helps me just push aside all the other things and just come down to like the I guess the basic truth of just like he literally just adores me.
Yeah.
And he adores the things that he put inside of me.
That's right.
So sweet.
Yeah.
So sweet.
So on these roads that we're on of figuring out who we are and what our roles are and how we fit and all that kind of thing, and we've all talked about it's hard work,
Yeah.
then what are ways that we can help each other, that we can support one another?
Yeah. I think, Sarah, what you just did
Yeah.
is the prime example. Like, I'm sitting over here like, I'm having an emotional week, so
Your
I might
eyes are
start
sparkling.
crying. Yeah. But seriously, like, encourage other women. When you see women walking in confidence or walking in their purpose, or you saw something that they did that was so great,
Yes.
tell them.
Yeah.
I think it's so simple. But why is that so hard for us?
Yeah.
Because we are struggling in our own way,
Yeah.
right?
And we're comparing.
Yeah, so it feels really hard, but that will like literally help women so much. I mean, I know for you, I have told you when you spoke at, I think it was a rally, one of those times, I was like, Sarah, like, that was amazing. You were walking in something that you've so been gifted in. That probably did something for your spirit, right? It did something for my spirit to tell you too.
Yeah.
And so I think whether you're walking through it or you're on the other side of it, tell one another when you notice, like, even down to physical things. How often do we give physical compliments?
Right.
Not very
Right.
often, right? But how good does it feel when another woman is like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, your makeup looks amazing, or
Right.
whatever it is that day. Down to even, so physical things, but then also gifts. Like people that you see that are walking in their gifts, tell them.
Right.
That's going to help to
Yeah.
build their character and to build their confidence.
Yeah, not assume that, oh, they know that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because they probably don't.
Right.
Or they
feel
need the
like
reminder.
that's- Like if you can look at your own life and think about like how often am I doing that and trying to build other people up is a good like little test.
Yeah.
Because the things that you can encourage other women with aren't going to be noticed by you if you're comparing yourself to them.
Exactly.
You're not even going to see those things about them. You're just going to wonder, why am I not like that?
Yep.
But I feel like on the flip side too, another just way to support each other in this and ourselves is just truly being vulnerable. Like, I feel like some of the things that I've been vulnerable in have given me freedom and just, okay, so now you know this about me.
Yeah.
And so now I can be more of that and I can
Yeah.
struggle through that
Yeah.
in front of you.
Yeah.
And then it also, like, the person that you're vulnerable with gives them space to be vulnerable back and just lets them know, like, hey, it's okay to, like, tell people these things.
Yeah. And pull you out of it. I
Yes.
think having people, I feel like I say this every time I'm on the podcast. Maybe it's just that important, or maybe I just really believe in it. But you don't have to have a million people, but just having one or two people that can pull that out of you and say, Sarah, I'm noticing that you've been a little reserved. Hey, what's going on? Let's talk about it. You shared with me, you know, having that expectation and that level of trust with each other. But hey, a couple months ago, you shared with me that this was something you were walking through. I'm noticing you slipping into it. Let's talk about it. And it's because you care about that person, right? And you want them to grow. But having that person is really important. So like you said, yes, sharing with them, but then also allowing them to pull it out of you.
I think that. I think it was back in season 1 of this podcast, we talked about our square squad of, you know, 1-inch square piece of paper and writing names on it and not trying to make it really teeny tiny so you can squeeze lots of them on there. But the idea is that who is that inner circle of people who could do exactly what you were talking about, both of you, you know, and so that sort of thing. And also, too, just having someone that's a mentor is another way of, you know, supporting one another. That person who can look at you and say, I want to encourage you to explore this part of your personality or this gifting. Yes, you can do it. I know it's scary, but you can do this. But I think also just community. Women with, like you were saying, women with women is such a powerful thing of that we can look at each other, and there's so many things that don't have to be explained because we're all women. And so we understand a lot of the stuff. So that's really important, but also just the idea of just being able to be someone's cheerleader. I mean, that's, I think, what we need to do is just be each other's cheerleader. Someone who steps out and is successful, we need to celebrate that. You know, and not stand back and say, oh, I wish I had done that. Oh, I feel bad because, you know, whatever, I'm not as good, or I feel like a failure. But instead being a cheerleader for someone else. Or one of the things I do it every morning, but especially on Sundays before I come here, is like, Lord, show me who you want me to encourage today.
It's so good.
And it can be as simple as what you said, to say, oh my gosh, I absolutely love those earrings. They are amazing. Just to be able to say to someone, to say, oh, you notice my earrings? You know, and it may be that at that moment, that woman is really struggling with how they feel about themselves, or whatever may be going on in their life. And just that little thing is just the thing that says, okay, I can do this day. I can do this day.
There's so much power in celebration. Like, celebration really does change heart posture. I fully believe it. If you can celebrate another woman, it's going to change heart posture, not even for just that day, but probably for days to come, if not months and years. I mean, there are things that people have said to me that I still remember years down the road. And that's what's built my confidence. Does my confidence come from the Lord? 100%, and always will. It doesn't come from other people, but God sends people, right? And God uses
and He
people.
uses people.
So let's lean into that, and let's be usable. Let's be the ones that say, like, okay, yes, I choose today to be the woman that is going to celebrate another person, another woman, to encourage her and lead her closer to Jesus.
I think it's good. So we celebrate you, Sarah, for looking at your small cookie cutter and making it a big cookie cutter. I'm going to have to get you a big cookie cutter. I'm going to look for one.
I pictured the big, huge gingerbread cookie cutter. That's what I saw. I love it.
Not the little donut hole one.
Right.
I know. Oh, my goodness. Well, one of the things, when we were talking about assertiveness, one of the things that came to me was that assertiveness really is a way of talking to each other biblically. I was thinking of the scripture in James 1:19, where it tells us that we should be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And basically, you are expressing, like, a good example would be like, Your husband told you he was coming home at 5 o'clock and he doesn't show up till 9. And so for 4 hours, you're worried about where the heck is he? Did he get in an accident, or is there something wrong, or whatever? To say to them that when you tell me you're coming home at 5 and you don't show up till 9, I feel really anxious for those 4 hours. I worry about whether you've been hurt. And when that happens, I need you to call me because I value our relationship and you mean so much to me. And so you're letting them know that you're doing this not to like hammer them down, but you're saying, I really care about you. But what your behavior did was like,
Yeah.
And so when you do that, that opens up rich communication. It's not putting somebody down. It's not tearing them down, but instead it's showing them their value to you.
Yeah.
You know, I found a really good article that kind of talks about Christian assertiveness, and we'll make sure that's in the show notes that you guys can click on it. And if you have any questions and want to know more about that too. But so to kind of summarize, hope.
Yeah.
What would you say right now is your role?
Great question. I feel like my role is to be the sparkling hope that God has called me to be within the business world, which is very new for me, but my role is to be simply that. And whatever that looks like, if it looks like having a positive conversation with someone, if it looks like encouraging someone, if it looks like just simply smiling, whatever that is, just being the sparkling hope that God has called me to be.
We need to get you a t-shirt that says sparkling hope.
Well, it's funny. I'm working for a company called Cincy Smiles, and I feel like my smile is something that God really has gifted me with. But I feel like when I see Cincy Smiles, I see a big smile with like a shing, like shine, like a sparkle on the tooth. So I feel like it just makes sense, right?
Yeah,
it just makes all the sense. But
that is absolutely perfect.
For that season, when I got the word sparkle, for that season, I bought everything that was sparkly. Like,
you can picture this.
Everything.
Yes.
Phone case, water bottle. It was also like the time when that was like in.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything was sparkly. So maybe I should go back to that. Maybe everything should be sparkly.
I think there you go. Yeah. How about you, Sarah?
What is my role? Is that the question? I feel right now very content where I am. And that is just in a place where I'm introspective and I have time and space to be that, and just listening to God and taking the things that He's teaching me and teaching them to my kids. And I do believe there's a call on my life for after they're in school, when they're a little bit older and they need me a little bit less.
Yeah.
And I know that God is doing the work in me now to get me to that place. And so just being tuned in and listening and seeking Him and making sure that anything He wants to download into me, like I'm open and available to receive.
Yeah, that's good. That's so good.
I love that you have this. This is what I am right now.
Yeah.
And I know there's a future.
Yeah.
That there's
Yeah.
more coming.
And I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really am. I wouldn't change where I am right now. I'm really happy
Yeah.
That's sweet.
where I am now.
Contentment is good.
Yes.
Yes.
What about you, Janice?
Well, it's interesting because I would say my role is to care for people.
You're great at that.
Yes, very.
And to nurture people.
Yeah.
But more than anything, just to care for people in whatever way and whatever place that God has.
Yeah.
You know, right now it's in ministry here at this church, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of what I do. But also, I just see that whether I'm here or I'm someplace else, that's just my bent, and that is what I do. I know I've shared it that one of my side gig is I sew. And I do alterations, and I do a lot of working with brides and teenage girls with prom gowns and their moms and things like that. And I find that it extends there.
Yeah.
And there's so many times with clients that I get to know them, especially the brides, because they come back multiple times, and things will get shared. And there's been many times where I said, you know what, is it okay if I pray for you right now?
That's powerful.
And I've never had anybody say no.
Yeah.
So
You're doing great.
So I feel like that is, probably my number one thing, you know, and right now I'm here and I'm so blessed. I'm so excited to be in the place that I am on the staff here.
Yeah, so
and
cool.
Even if I am the oldest one, and they never let me forget it.
Hey, we love you. We love you for it.
I love that you run your sewing business out of your home too, because I feel like I've come over to your house to have a
me
dress
too.
altered,
A couple.
and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this feels so warm and fuzzy in here. Like I just know
fuzzy,
that
I
this
love
whole
that.
house is full of so much love, and I know that some of the listeners here don't have the privilege of having Janice physically in their life.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you right now, she gives literally the best hugs.
Yeah.
I tell everyone that. I tell everyone that anytime I need a hug, I'm going to Janice, and sometimes I wish I could just like actually like jump up into her arms and she'd catch me, but I don't think I'd hurt her. But she literally gives the best hugs. So you really are very good at caring for people.
So,
yes. I love it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
Lord, we are so happy that you tuned into this podcast. I'm praying too that all of you took away something about who you are.
Yeah.
You are God's daughter, and He loves you more than you could ever know. And even though your roles may change in your life, from one transition to another, that one never changes. And I think that what Hope and Sara and I have shared, I hope is something that you take away and that you sit down and maybe talk with your friends. Be that woman who sees someone, encourage them, celebrate somebody. Make it a point to do that today.
Yeah.
And maybe do it every day.
Yeah.
And I will guarantee you that if you do, it not will only light them up, but it's going to light you up too, because it returns to you and the blessing.
Yeah.
So thanks so much, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to sign up for the Inspired Conference on April 27th. If you ever have any questions, you can email us at inspired@thex.church.